Hello everyone, welcome to SN and in today's video we're going to build this GenAI powered medical report diagnosis application where we'll be having two roles of user. One is a patient and another is a doctor. As of now what we have done that that any patient can upload its medical report and ask for a diagnosis, and it can ask that what we should do. Not any medical advice. I'm not suggesting that you should agree with that, no, but it will give you some suggestion what you should do, what you might have had. That's much like it's a diagnosis. Okay, same if any user have logged in as a doctor, then the doctor, as of now we have only one feature, that doctor can see any patient's diagnosis history. Okay, so this is the two main feature we have for a patient and a doctor, and we have deployed the application in Streamlit Cloud, like the front end in the Streamlit Cloud and the backend in the render. Okay, absolutely free of cost. Gemini embedding model, Groq API key, Pinecone API key for our Pinecone vector database, MongoDB to store our diagnosis data, to store our report data, to store our user authentication data. Okay, so and for the backend we have used FastAPI with LangChain. Okay, so now let us show you with an example. Okay, and the authentication part I have created in the sidebar. You are free to build your own custom module with better advancement, but I am mainly focused on the backend, not too much on the front end. Okay, so let me just sign up with a new user. So let's say Rajesh is a new user which has a password and he is a patient. Okay, so sign up. Okay, so you could see a message, user created successfully, you can log in. Okay, so Rajesh 6, use the password, login, and you could see logged in as Rajesh. Now to show you the data, we'll refresh the MongoDB, and here you could see we have Rajesh, a patient, and you could also see that we have hashed our password. Okay, so now patient can upload a report, right? So I'll upload a report. Sorry, I have to click in here. Let's say this report 1, open, upload the reports. So reports uploaded successfully, and the document ID is this. Now you could see automatically this document ID have been placed over here. Now this is the default question that you can ask, that please provide a diagnosis based on my report. So let's click on that button, and you could see diagnosis generated. So diagnosis result, probable diagnosis based on the report. A probable diagnosis is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, or asthma. Okay, key findings, some findings with the bullet points. Recommended next step. See, everything is recommended. See, suggestion, not a medical advice. Pulmonary function test, PFT, chest X-ray. Treatments, inhaler therapy, consider referral to a pulmonologist. Okay, again very careful, please note that these are suggestion and not a definitive diagnosis. All right, now I'll simply log out and let me create a new user as Vikas, who happens to be a doctor. Sign up. Okay, come over here, Vikas 5, login. See, logged in as a Vikas doctor. Close. Now I want to see diagnosis result of Rajesh. View the records, and found one diagnosis records for Rajesh at this time Okay, document ID, question, diagnosis answer, everything. And it is also telling me the sources, the PDF. So the application can also keep a track of which PDF that you that the patient have used. Okay, like the under the hood, it's mean that this application have the track of all the PDF from where the LLM have generated the information. Okay, so this is what we are going to build, and we have also deployed the application. You could see medical diagnosis.streamlit.app, which is a complete deployed application. And if you want to see its backend, so let me just wait. So this is the backend. Okay, we have deployed this medical report diagnosis. Okay, all right. So before we get into the video, we'll first understand what are the fundamental concepts that we have been used in this video. Like we have been used for this application. We'll talk about the tech stack. We'll talk about how to create this kind of application by yourself. See, I have created with the medical approach. You can easily create with a teacher student approach, with any other different approach. So we'll talk about as a framework how we can easily create this kind of GenAI powered application more independently. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that now. Okay, all right. So before we get into the coding part, right, we should understand how RAG works, right? And this is the pretty basic thing and that I do in my every RAG GenAI video. So let us first understand how RAG works, pretty simple way, and then we'll be understanding how the whole application would work. Okay, so the first, you could see in the red dotted line right here, any patient will upload, or anyone will upload its document, which could be a PDF and document, text, JSON file, CSV file, whatever. Then it will be extracted into two way. Either if your PDF consists of multiple images, then those images will be segregated in a different way, in a different chunk, and the whole text will be segregated into these multiple chunks. Then we'll be having an embedding model. You can use multimodal or simple embedding model. Through that, we'll be converting those chunks into vectored images. Now these vectored images will be of multiple dimensions. Okay, now after converting this vector embeddings, we'll be storing them in our vector database. See these two database. Okay, now this side is done. Now, and if you can see from the right hand side, you could see there is a user, and the user will first provide a query, and we first have to generate an embedding, like the vectored embedding for that query as well. Okay, so we'll generate an vectored embedding, then we'll pass that to our vector database, and we'll extract the relevant information as per that user query. Okay, and after extracting the relevant information, we'll pass that. First, we'll set up a proper context, and in this context, we can add our previous conversation, all the extracted information from the vector database, and the user's query. And we'll design and we'll set the context first, and then we'll feed that to our LLM. Now you can use Gemini, Claude, GPT, whatever you want, and then we'll be having a proper structure answer. Okay, so this is how this RAG works. Okay, now this is the medical diagnosis application that we have built, the application, or that will be building that's flowchart. Okay, so if you could see here that the application will start from a patient is signing up to the application, and the patient uploads their medical report to the system. Then the backend will process the uploaded report. Then again the backend creates the vectored embeddings for the report. Then the backend stores the embedding in the Pinecone. Then patient asks a question about the diagnosis. Then backend runs the RAG query to retrieve the information. Then patient receives the diagnosis. Okay, up to this, it's all about the patient. Now, if a doctor initiates now if a doctor initiates the process by logging in or signing up, doctor searches for a patient by a name, and the backend retrieves patient record from the MongoDB, and then the doctor views the patient a diagnosis history. Okay, So this is the whole application flow that we'll be building, and then this is the core module that we have. So this medical diagnosis application have an authentication module, API module, database module, diagnosis module, and report processing module, right? Authentication modules consist of sign up, login. API module has request routing and backend entry point. Database module, and here we'll be storing our user data and our diagnosis reports, all the metadata. Okay. Then in the report processing module, we have file upload, text extraction, and vector embeddings. And in the diagnosis module, we'll be having user question, diagnosis retrieval, and the RAG LLM pattern. Okay. Now this is the application architecture which you'll be having in this particular project report that I'll be sharing you with the GitHub. Here we have the introduction, tech stack that we'll be using, and the core features that this application have, core concepts you see, architecture, role-based access control, RAG. This is the diagram. This is the core module, and this is the application flow. I have provided you all the images, so if you want to create a proper report for your project, you can easily do that. Okay. Now the most important thing that I want to talk about. See, I'll be creating this medical diagnosis application, right? But you might want to use your other GenAI application, right? So for that, you should be able to build it by yourself. So this is, I have built a simple template of how to build, and we'll be following that, and we'll follow that, and we'll follow this template in this video as well. Okay. So it starts from the step 1 where you need to set up an UB project. Then you have to activate the virtual environment. Then you need to create a separate folders for server and client, because we need to keep server and client differently. Then we need to create the requirement.txt for everyone. Then we'll install the required dependencies. Then we need to test the backend with simple API endpoint to see that if the installation is done properly or not. Okay. Then in our step 4, we'll add our environment variables like our MongoDB URI, our Pinecone index API, our Groq API, Gemini API, everything that you need. If you want to use any other API software, then that's as well. Step 5, for the modular backend, we need to create different modules for folders. Like in this video, we'll be having auth folder, reports folder, configuration folder, and diagnosis folder. For your application, you might have much more. Okay. Then get a config file where we have to load our environment variables. Step 6, we'll first set up our data models for user authentication and other modules like reports or diagnosis. Okay. And step 7, simple. We need to complete the authentication module, because that's the first thing. Then for the authentication module, you can create your hashing function. Then if you want to use JWT token, you can use that as well. Then define the API routes and test it. Then step 8. After testing the authentication, we need to code the modules related to the vector store. Okay. So see, we'll first cater the vector store related modules. Then we create the function for initialize and vector DB. If you want to use files, chroma, pinecone, we first need to initialize it. Then define the function for upload documents like loader, splitting, embedding, chunking, uploading each and every module. You need to create function for each and every modules. Then API route to perform these tasks. Sure. Then we'll test it. Okay. Again, step 9, code the modules for RAG invocation. See, authentication, vector store. Now user will pass a query and we need to extract information as per the query, like this RAG invocation where we'll be using this LLM as well. So the code modules for RAG invocation for extracting relevant chunks, embedding the query, invoke the LLM to get a response, set up the context and sources properly, then set up API endpoint and test them into Postman or curl, whatever you want to use. As of now, then in the step 10, this would help you building a simple basic RAG application. Now, if you want to use something different like an teacher-student classroom RAG application or lawyer-based application, anything, then same way, create different folders, cater different small modules, create the functions, then create the API endpoint, then test them. Okay, simple format. Step 11, now as the backend is over, we need to create the frontend. You can choose Streamlit, Gradio, Dash, or also React.js, Next.js if you want to make it much more, much more feasible. Then, but always use the .env file so that you can easily attach the backend URL, because see, we need to keep separate the backend and the front end. Okay, so when we'll be creating the front end, we need to have an option so that we can add the backend URL properly. Okay, now the final step, step 12, after building the front end by dividing the each module separately and merging them in the root file. Okay, so whatever module you'll be having in the front end, divide them module by module, code those modules, then merge it in a final root file. Okay, then you should be able to good to go for the deployment, and we'll follow this template to code our application. Okay, so yeah, now let's get to the coding part. Alright, so before we move ahead, let me just quickly share something really useful for us developers, marketers, and anyone managing multiple accounts securely. So if you have ever needed to manage multiple social media accounts, ads, or client profiles without really getting flagged, you know how tough it can be, right? And that is exactly where GoLogin comes in. See, GoLogin is an anti-detection browser that let us create multiple isolated browser profiles with unique fingerprints. So platforms sees them as real separate devices, not just tabs on the same computer, which is perfect for growth hacking, automation, and staying safe online. And what I personally like about GoLogin is that it is super simple to set up, and it works on Windows, Mac, Linux, even in the cloud, right? So you can easily use proxies to stay anonymous. Now, if you want to try it out, I have added my referral link in the description. You will get a free trial, and for your first purchase, you will get a 40% off. Okay, so what I'll suggest, explore all the features, and see, GoLogin is becoming a go-to tool for professionals and who needs security and flexibility. Okay, so now we'll see how to use GoLogin with a simple example. So now we are in this GoLogin website, right? So here, if you select in the 7-day trial, you'd see that you can download GoLogin anti-detect browser for your Windows, Linux, Mac M series, or even from Google Play Store for your Android. Okay, so you can easily download this. It's a simple process like others. So what I'll do, and after downloading, you'll be seeing this kind of a dashboard. Okay, now see, the browser that GoLogin uses, that's called Orbita browser. You can read about that in online as well. So I'll show you how to create a new profile. Okay, so you'll be seeing this kind of 4 default profile for created for you. Okay, so I'll click in this add profile, and here I'll name this, let's say sndev01. Okay, I'll select GoLogin proxy, and I'll choose United States. Okay, then I'll choose check proxy, and already you could see that the proxy in United States, US, Philadelphia, 442 minutes. Okay, now I'll just create this profile, and that's it. So now my another existence of my whole browser is being created with this United States. Okay, now I'll just click in this run, checking proxy, and you could see a new browser has been opened, which is the Orbita browser. And here, let me first search my location. Okay, see my location, and here it's saying the results for Philadelphia, PA. Okay, so this is the thing. Now what I'll do again, here I'll write x.com. Okay, now here you can see Twitter, X. Now I can easily sign up with Google, and here you can easily sign in with your any email ID, which will create a different existence of your profile in the internet. Okay, so that's how we can easily use GoLogin, which is an anti-detection browser, to create multiple accounts. Okay, so that's it for the video, and what I've said already, I have given you the referral link, and if you go and if you start with that, okay, so let me stop it first. Alright, so if you register login with the referral link, you will be having a 40% off with your first purchase. Okay, so now as all have been said, now let's get to the video. Okay. Alright everyone, so we'll be using MongoDB to store our user data and diagnosis data, and we'll be using Google AI embedding model from this Google AI Studio, and Groq API key from Groq Cloud, and Pinecone database for our vector database. So this is, and if I show you, wait a minute. Okay, so here is my indexes. Okay, and now let's set up our environment. All right, so now to set up our environment, we'll be using UV, which is a pretty fast Python package manager. Okay, so to initialize a project with UV, what we do, we write this command UV init dot, because this is the project directory where I want to build my application. So UV init dot, you could see dot Python version, main.py, pyproject.toml, and readme.md, and which is the pretty basic structure of whenever you initialize a project with UV. Okay, now we need to create a virtual environment where we'll be installing those dependencies. So you sorry um, okay, so UV venv. Okay, enter. You see a new folder has been created with .venv. Now we need to activate this, and you could see we have this command right here, activate with .venv slash script slash activate. Okay, so we'll just copy this line command, we'll paste it, enter. Okay, so we have activated our virtual environment. Okay, now we'll create a file name as requirements.txt. okay, enter. Now here I need to add those dependencies that I would want to install. Okay, all right, so here we have FastAPI, we have UVCon, we have PyMongo, we have Python multipart, PyPDF2, PyPDF LangChain, the whole community of LangChain. So LangChain community, LangChain core, LangChain Groq, because we are using Groq API, Pinecone, LangChain Google GenAI, Python.env, bcryptjs to hash user password, then JWT. We don't really need JWT, so I'll just cut it out. Then we'll have Streamlit and requests. Okay, I'll save this. Now then here I'll write this command uv pip install -r requirements.txt, enter. Okay, and it will install those dependencies pretty fast as compared to poetry and peep or ppnv. Okay, alright, so the installation is done. Now what we'll do, we'll simply create a FastAPI endpoint and we'll test that endpoint in Postman. Okay, so I'll show you how to create a FastAPI endpoint and also how to test in Postman. Okay, so as you could see, we have installed FastAPI. So in main.py, I'll come here, and here I'll fast import, right? So from FastAPI, I'll import FastAPI. Okay, then my app name will be app. So app initialize the application with FastAPI. That's it. Now what we'll do, I need an endpoint, right? So @app, because this is the name, get, and my API endpoint will be simple slash health. Okay, then def health check, where I'll simply return a message. So okay, all right, now I'll come here, I'll run this FastAPI application. So uv corn, the file name is main, under which I have app. So reload. Okay, and why reload? Because if I change anything in the backend, the application should reload itself automatically. Okay, so my UVCon is running at this 8000 port. Now I'll open Postman. Okay, so here I have this multiple projects where I have tested my multiple APIs. So what I'll do, I'll create a new blank collection. So simple, I'll name the collection as medical report diagnosis. Okay, then here I'll initialize a simple add request. Okay, and here what I'll do, I need the API endpoint. So I'll copy this from here, I'll paste it right over here, then slash, then I should see that message. Okay, send. Alright, it's saying there is an error, detail not found. Oh sorry, my API endpoint name is slash health, right? So I need to give it HEALTH, send, and here you go. Okay, so we have seen how we'll be using Postman, because we are going to use lots of Postman because we have to test our APIs before we create the front end. Okay, all right, so now we need to create this .env file, okay, where we'll be adding our API keys or other environment variables. So first we need to get our Mongo URI and our database name. Okay, so let's do that. So here so you first open your MongoDB and do your registration, and then in this organization overview you create a new project. You name this project as medical diagnosis. Okay, then next, project owner me, you don't have to do anything, then create the project. Okay, now here we need to create a cluster. Okay, so we'll create a cluster, and here we'll choose and here we'll choose this free tier. Okay, so we'll be getting 512 MB storage, RAM will be shared, and CPU will be shared, and features free forever. So you don't need to worry about, like usage got extended as per the user requirement. Okay, then create deployment. All right, so select all images with stairs. So this one, I think that's enough. Verify. All right, So medical diagnosis overview. Now I got this model part, and you can copy this password. So I will copy this password. Then need to create a database user. Okay, a database user has been created. Then I need to choose a connection method. Then come in here, drivers, and here you need, and here this is the Mongo URI. Okay, so copy this one, come here, paste it right over here. Okay, all done. Click in this cluster, browse collection, and this is where you will be seeing your data. Okay, now I'll minimize that. Don't worry, I'll just open the VS Code. Now we need to give a database name. Okay, so as the name is medical diagnosis, so I'll give it same medical diagnosis. Okay, simple. Save it. Okay, and you need to add your Pinecone API key, Pinecone index name, Pinecone environment, which will be US East 1. Let me just write it down here. So US East 1, because we are using the Pinecone free tier, so we need to use US East 1. Pinecone index name will be using medical diagnosis to sync every name. Okay, and here you need to put your Pinecone API key, here add your Google API key, here your Groq API key, and here we'll be creating a folder where we'll temporarily save our uploaded PDF files. Okay, so I'll name it as, let's say, uploaded dir. Okay, save. All right, now we'll be creating multiple folders. Okay, so first will be our auth folder where we'll write the code for our wait a minute, first I need to create the global server folder. Okay, so I'll create the folder as server, under which I'll create multiple folders. So I have my auth folder, I'll be having my config folder, then diagnosis, and data models, and finally reports. Okay, done. And this uploaded directory will be created automatically when we'll run the application. Okay, so now we need to create our authentication module for our sign up, login with MongoDB as our database. Okay,
alright, so now we're going to build this authentication module, and here the first thing that we're going to write, we're going to create the model schema, in which format we're going to take the sign up values. Okay, so let's say in auth I'll create a file as simple models.py, and to use this and to create this data model I'll be using Pydantic. Okay, and Pydantic helps us to write perfect data schema that will be passing from frontend to backend in a proper structured format. Okay, so from Pydantic I'll import base model. Okay, now I'll simply create a class, initialize a class of, let's say, sign up request. Okay, sign up request, where I'll pass this base model colon, and I need to define. So I need username. I'm giving it as simple as possible. Of course, you can make it as complex for your application. Okay, I'll be needing string. Sorry, I'll be needing password, and I'll be needing role. Okay, so in role also will be in the form of string. Okay, and this role would be mainly patient and admin or doctor. Okay, but as of now, the features that we have created, it will be patient will upload a PDF, will ask for a diagnosis, and doctor can see that for each patient what are the diagnoses he have had. Now you can make it more complex. You can add admins for different feature, for doctors a different feature, more about that. Okay, now I'll save this. Now after creating this model schema, what we need to build, we need to build some utilization module. Okay, where we will be having two module, like two function, as one for hashing our password, because we will be storing a password, but we can't store the password as it is, because as an admin we shouldn't get to see what an user has given as a password, so we need to hash it. So for that we'll be using a function. So for that we'll be creating a function hash password, and at the time of login we need to verify that hash password as well. So that's why we have to create the verify password function. Okay, so now let's do that. So here I'll simply create another file as hashutils.py. Okay, so here I'll first import decrypt. Okay, then what I need to do, simple hash password, and here I'll be passing the password in the form of string, and I'll return a string as well. Okay, now return calling my decrypt function, decrypt dot, I need to hash it. So hash pw, then my password dot, I need to encode this in UTF-8 format. Okay, UTF-8, and then after encoding again decrypt, I need to generate those hash numbers. So for that I need to use gensalt. All right, then finally I also need to decode it, and decode will be also in the same format of UTF-8. Okay, that's it. This is how we need to hash a password. Then to verify a password, so verify password, here I'll be passing my password in the form of string, also hashed format, so hashed also the string. Okay, and this will return a boolean that at the time of login is this user with this password exist or not, right? So bool, again return, I'll use decrypt, and this time I need to use check password function. So check pw, then password I need to encode with UTF, so UTF-8. Okay, then again for my hashed, so this hashed I need to encode this, so encode, here I'll be using UTF-8 format, UTF-8 format. Okay, so that's pretty much it, and these two functions will help me to hash a password and to verify a password, which we'll be using in our next file. Okay, alright, so before we define the routes for our sign up and login, let us create the config file for our multiple DBs user collection. Okay, so in the config we'll simply create a database.py for our MongoDB, and here what we'll do, first form.env, we need to import load.env, and from PyMongo we'll import Mongo client. Okay, now here I'll simply call the function load.env. Now here my Mongo URI, so Mongo URI os.getEnv, and here my Mongo URI, I haven't imported OS, so import OS. So Mongo URI would be my os.getEnv, my Mongo URI, which is in this .env file, my Mongo URI. Okay, so then I also need to have my DB name, so DB name os.getEnv, and here DB name, and you can also add a default name over here if by chance you forgot to add this in the env file. So that's why we'll be using this simple thing, diagnoses. Okay, all right, Now we need to have our client, where we'll call our Mongo client to initialize a Mongo client, right? We'll add our Mongo URI, and where we need to add our database. So DB client with this particular DB name, because we need to connect with our MongoDB database, right? Now, see, we'll be storing user data, our reports, the reports that user will be uploading, and the diagnosis history. So we need to have multiple collection under that my database name, right? So for users collection, I can have, I'll name it DB users. For reports collection, I can have reports, and for diagnosis collection, I can have simple DIA, I can have diagnosis history. Okay, so I'll be storing those data into this users collection, reports collection, and diagnosis history collection under my database name. Okay, I'll save this. Now I need to create the authentication routes. So here I'll name route.py. Okay.
Alright, so now for this route.py file, right? So here we'll be creating our sign up and our login route. Okay, so first we need to add this top import elements, where we need to import API router, HTTP exception depends from FastAPI, HTTP basics, basic credential from FastAPI.security, then our sign up request data model, has password, verify password function, and our users collection, because all the data related to the authentication will be stored in the users collection. Okay, now I need to initialize a router. So router, I'll call API router. Here I'll add an affix, sorry, I'll add an prefix. Okay, so prefix like this, and my prefix will be /auth. So in the API endpoint, which will be the particular URL /auth/signup, I'll be showing that. Wait a minute, then let us add some tags. So tags will be simple auth. Okay, now let me initialize the security. So security would be HTTP basic. Okay, now let us create our first route. So to create route with a router, we'll use @router dot post. Here we'll add /signup. Okay, now we need to create the function. So def sign up, and we need to pass the request. So request, we need to pass our sign up request data model, which have our all the credentials. Okay, now here if some safety check. So if user collections dot find one, so let's say find one with the username of request dot username, then I need to showcase an HTTP exception, so HTTP exception, which will be with the status code of 400, that the user already exists, right? So my detail would be simple, that okay, done. And if I'll simply add that, so user collection dot insert one, it will be insert. So if the user doesn't exist, so users collection dot insert one mean I'm inserting the element, mean I'm inserting the new data. So in the format of simple username, which would be this request dot username comma, Then we have password, which will be request dot password, and finally the role. So role would be request dot role. Okay, and finally we need to return, will return a message which is pretty important, that user created successfully. Okay, done. Now we need to create the route for our login, right? Now in the login route, what we'll do again, router, and this will be a get route. The previous one was a post route, and this one would be a get route. So get route simple slash login def function is login. Here we need to pass the user value, so user, and here you can use this depend function, depends, and here we need to create this authentication module. Authentication. Now what this not authentication, better to be so better would be the authenticate. Okay, so here we'll be using this authenticate module. Okay, now we need to create this authenticate, so let us first write pass. Okay, now for this authenticate I'll create one over here, so def authenticate. Okay, now here I'll first need to provide the credentials. So credentials will be in the form of HTTP basic credentials. So basic credentials, which depends on the security, as my security is HTTP basic. Okay, now colon, here I'll first need to get the user. So user would be user collection dot find one. So find one, so I'll be having my username from credential dot username. Okay, if we found the user, then we'll just return the username with its role. If we do not found, then we need to provide an error, right? So let's say if not user, or not verify password, mean if not user, mean if the user doesn't exist, or not verify password mean the password the user is using to login is wrong. So if not user or not verify password, then credentials dot password of that user with this user, right? What we'll do, we'll simply raise an error. So http exception, and status code would be 401, and I need to provide the detail, which will be that invalid credentials. Okay, and if we do get found the user, then we simply need to return, and what we return, will return the username. So username of username, and we need to get the role okay, and after creating this authenticate module, you see the error is gone. Now here simple, I'll return that this is my username will be simple, username will be my user of username, and for role this will be user role. Okay, simple. I guess this is very much okay. So user depends, username. All right, I'll save this, and now we'll run the application. Okay, so UVcorn within the server, I'll use the main file. The name is app, and reload. Enter. And if you see there is any error, we'll solve that. Okay, let's see. It's saying could not import module server.main. So, oh yeah, sure. I forgot. Sorry. So now for the main file, right? So within this server, we need to have this main.py, which will be the entry point. So main.py. Okay. Now here we need to import couple of things. So for first, from FastAPI, we need to import FastAPI. So FastAPI. Then from FastAPI dot middleware dot course, we need to import course origin, like course middleware, which will help us to add our backend to our frontend. Okay, like without any problem. So course origin middleware. So fastAPI.middleware.course, import course middleware. That's it. And then from dot auth dot from this routes, from this route, we'll import this router, and I'll name this as auth router. Okay, done. Now I need to initialize the application. So app FastAPI, I'll name this as RBAC, medical report diagnosis. Okay, that's it. Then we need to allow all the origins. So app.add middleware, course middleware, we need to allow origins, allow methods, and allow headers. Now simple app.include router, app.include router, and I'll simply need to add the auth router. Okay, that's it. Now what we'll do, we'll simply come here, UVcorn server main app reload. Sorry, this should be app reload. Okay, this should work. Let's see if there is any error. I don't think there would be any error. All right, there is an error. It's saying that Mongo client object is not callable. Okay, so the problem would be in the db.py. So db.py is saying Mongo client is not callable. Oh, sure. See, this db name would be within the third bracket, not first bracket. Save. Now this should reload automatically. So let's wait. See, waiting for application startup complete. So now it's done. Now I'll search for Postman. Where is Postman? So here what we'll do, we need to add a request. So we'll add a request. Okay, here I'll write sign up, and here let me just write it http, sorry, not this. I already having it now, so don't worry. This one I'll be changing this to post, and here I first need to add the prefix. Remember, auth/sign up. Okay, and this will be on post everything. I'll come to body, I'll come to raw, and this will be a JSON format. Okay, all right, there we go. Then first, sorry, username would be SN password 34 34 and role would be, let's say, patient. Okay, let's see. Okay, so user created successfully. All right, now we'll come to our MongoDB. We'll simply see, as of now there is no database name, there is no collection. Okay, now I'll refresh this. Okay, so you could see we have a database created with the name of medical diagnosis. So within this cluster 0 you can create multiple database with under which we'll be having multiple collection. So we have medical diagnosis with one collection as username, as users, which stores our username, SN Supradev, and password 1234. Okay, so which stores our username and password. Okay, right, so you could see there is a problem in our data that we are storing the password 1234, mean there would be there is a problem that our password is not hashing anymore. So let us see. Now you could see here that at the time when I have inserted the data, I didn't use the hash password function. I have just simply added the request.password. Here I need to use this hash password. So hash password first bracket under which I need to keep this request password. Okay, I'll save this and then I'll come over here and I'll write 1235 and okay, send. User created successfully. We'll come over here, we'll refresh. And this time you could see the password is hash now. Okay, so this is wrong, so we need to delete this. We'll delete this data and all right. Okay, now what do we need to do? We need to okay, so first we need to now have our other data models in which format we'll be storing our report, like our uploaded reports, and we'll be storing our diagnosis record. Okay, so for that what I'll do in these models, I'll create db models.py, and here we need to have this multiple data model as user out, as username and role, report meta in which format we will be storing our medical report, and diagnosis record in which format we will be storing our diagnosis report into MongoDB. Okay, we'll save this and I'll just close everything. So close all right. Now where it goes, we need to create the diagnosis. So first we need to create the report. So in the report we'll create the file as vectorstore.py. okay,
so now for this vectorstore.py file where we'll be initializing our Pinecone vector database, and we'll write the code so that we can upload a PDF and we'll chunk it, we'll embed each and every module, and then also we'll store those data into our vector database, and also we'll store the metadata into our MongoDB. Okay, so first we need to import couple of dependencies. So here you can see we have imported OS, time, Asyncio, so that we can sync our multiple APIs work and our API fetching time. Okay, then pathlib, then from pathlib import path, because see we need to get the path where we'll be storing our PDF files. So that's why we need to have the path. Then load.env to store the .env variable, then tqdm to show that uploading of files to Pinecone vector database, then Pinecone and serverless spec for our Pinecone, then PyPDF loader for our uploading document, then recursive character text splitter for splitting, and Google generative AI embeddings. And from .config.db we need to get our reports collection where we'll be storing those metadata. Okay, now the first thing we need to do, we need to call our load.env to, here we go, and now we need to get all our API keys. Okay,
so you could see we have added our Google API key, our Pinecone API key, Pinecone environment, Pinecone index name, which is actually what we have added in the environment file is different, but as I have said earlier, we should always add some default value. So that's why also in the environment we have added some default value, but of course not in the API key. Then uploaded directory, this is the main value, and this is the uploaded report, which is the the rollback value. Okay. Then wasted environment Google API key, because we need this for our AI embedding. Okay. Now the first thing that we'll be doing, we need to initialize Pinecone. Okay, so how we'll do that? PC will call the Pinecone function. So our Pinecone function, where we'll add our API key, which is Pinecone API key. Okay, also we need to have our SPC, which is where we'll be calling our serverless spec, and here we'll add the parameters of cloud, which is AWS for the free tier, and the region would be US East 1. Okay, and we don't need to add this US East 1 because I have my Pinecone environment. So Pinecone env. Okay, now I first need to retrieve all my existing indexes. So existing indexes, and how I'll get that? See, for index, let's say for I in my PC, which is my particular Pinecone index, Pinecone database. So PC dot, I'll use this list index. So list indexes. From this, I need to store all the indexes name. So I name. Okay, so this is how I'll be storing all my existing indexes, because see, I can't create same index name twice. Okay, so now what do we need to do? That we need to write the, now we need to connect with our Pinecone vector database with that particular index that we want to create, right? So for that, if Pinecone index name means the index that we want to create, if this particular Pinecone index name not present in the existing, I mean I don't have an index as with this name, then I'll use this create index, where I'll be naming this as Pinecone index name, and which dimension I need to define, as every AI embedding vectors have a particular dimension vector, right? So as I'm using Google AI embedding, which is embedding 001, which dimension is about 768. So 768 dimension, and the metrics that I'll be using, metric, which is dot product. You can also use cosine, but I'm using dot product. So dot product, and SPC is our SPC serverless function. Okay, then see, creating an index might take some time, so we'll be giving 1 second of relaxation time for our application. Okay, so that's why while not in particular PC dot describing index. So let me first describe the index. So describe index with my Pinecone index dot, not here, so status ready. So see, so if the Pinecone index that I want to create, if it is not ready yet, then what I'll do, simply time dot sleep. Okay, there will be some error. Okay, so not in PC dot describe index, fine, no, while not, okay, it won't be in, okay, it will be just simple not. All right, after that I need to initialize, so index pc dot index Pinecone index name. Okay, so this index is what we'll be using in our further application to assert our PDF values. Okay, all right, so now we'll create that load vector store function. Okay, so we'll use async def load vector store, and we need to pass our uploaded files. So uploaded files, which would be in the form of list, right? Because user can upload multiple files. So list upload file, so upload file, and uploaded, there will be a string, and I also need to pass the doc id, so doc id will also be a string. Okay, colon. Now I need to define this. So first we should always add a doc string, so I'll use a doc string over here. So okay, now what we'll write this function, like what this function does, right? So this function save files, chunk texts, and embed texts, then upsert in Pinecone, and it's also write metadata to Mongo. Okay, so these are the function, like these are the feature that this function will perform. Now the first thing is we need to get our embed model. So embed model, and to get that I'll use Google generative AI embeddings, and I need to write the model name. So model, which will be models slash embedding, and here I need to use 001. Okay, after that, for file in uploaded files, file name would be my path of file name of the name, right? Because see, after I'll upload a PDF, I'll be storing in a temporary that directory of upload dir, right? So I need to get the path, and I need to get the file name from that particular path. So path file.filename.name. Okay, then I'll be saving this. So save path, and where I'll be saving this in my upload directory. So upload dir. Okay, and also and how I upload that, and with the convention of upload directory slash the particular doc id and the file name, right? So I'll be using an f string, and we'll pass the doc id and then my file name. So I'll be storing that in this format. So it will be only one double bracket. Okay, so I'm uploading those PDF in doc id underscore file name. Okay, then I need to save the content. So content would be await dot file read. So now I'm reading the files and I'm storing that into my content variable. Then I need to open that. So with open, I'll use save path with wb as I need to be able to write. So as a simple alias, then f dot write, and I'll use the content. Okay, so this is how so this particular loop will help me to upload a file, store that into our upload directory, and then also retrieve the content from that. Okay, now what I'll do after this, I need to load PDF pages, because the PDF have multiple pages, right? So for that, I'll create a variable as loader where I'll call my PyPDF loader. Okay, and simple, what I'll do, I'll pass the safe path with the string. So loader PyPDF loader with that particular string, like that particular path. Okay, now in documents variable, what I'll do, I'll simply use loader dot load. Now I'm loading this, and after loading I need to use the splitter because I need to split. So in splitter I'll be using this recursive character splitter with the chunk size of 500 and chunk overlap of 50. Could be 100 actually, better. Chunk overlap 50. Okay, then I need to store all those chunks. So here splitter dot split the document. So splitter dot splitting the documents, and I'll simply pass my documents. So in this chunks variable, now I have multiple chunks of storing 500 characters in each and every chunk. Okay, now what I need to do, I need to extract the metadata, and I need to create an ID, and I need to store the text, like I need to store the page content into a variable which I'll be using further, and I need to have my ID, and I need to extract the metadata. Okay, so for that, let's say in texts, here what I'll do, I'll be looping through my whole page content. Okay, so for chunk, in those multiple chunks, what I'll do, chunk dot page content. Okay, so chunk dot page content for chunk in chunks. Okay, this I'll be storing in text. Now I need IDs. So how I'll get that? Simple, for I in range of length of chunks. I mean, how many chunks do I have? So if I have 5 chunks, so the IDs would be, let's say for first chunk it would be 1, for second chunk it would be 2, like this. For first chunk it would be, yeah, like number. Okay, so range length chunks, and to store that, how will be storing this? Simple, symbol with an X string with my doc ID, and we're subtracting that with our iteration. Okay, now after that we need to get our metadata. Okay, so here in the metadata we have source, doc ID, uploader, page, and all those things. Now here it's saying an error as uploader, so there should be some changes into it. So uploaded, so it should be uploaded. Okay, so this is how we'll be storing our metadata, and for chunk in chunks, for every chunk we'll be storing this metadata. Okay, now last and final thing, not like last, we need to get our embeddings in the threads, because we are using multiple threads right now. So okay, so we'll create a simple variable at embeddings where await, I'll use asyncio dot to thread, and here I'll simply need to pass the embed model dot embed documents. So embed documents and text. Okay, so embed model dot embed the documents text, and after that what we need to do, we need to simple observe and run in thread to simply avoid the blocking. Okay, so now when we simply need to upload those PDF embeddings to our Pinecone vector database within a thread, because see, we are calling this function, but this function is calling our Gemini API. It's splitting our document, it's doing this chunking, it's embedding our PDF. So it's doing multiple things. So we need to keep all the work under a sync using thread. Okay, so embedding await asyncio.toThread. Now also we need to use this upsert. So we'll create an upsert function, def upsert, and simple index dot upsert. Here we'll have our vectors, which is in the form of list, where I'll simply zip, and within the zip I need to provide my IDs, embeddings, and the metadatas. Okay, and after that need to write simply await asyncio dot toThread with upsert. Okay, so we are also keeping this upserting function in a thread so that we don't get in a deadlock situation. Okay, all right, so after that, the final thing that we need to do, we need to save report. We need to save the report metadata in Mongo. Okay, now how we'll do that? Simple, we have our report collection dot insert one, first bracket, second bracket, done, and we'll simply copy this one. So I'll copy this, I'll paste it over here, but I need to change something. So doc ID will be doc ID, uploader will be uploaded. So doc ID will be doc ID, uploader will be uploaded, page will be, okay, I don't need pages, so I'll cut this, I'll cut this over here. So we have doc ID, we have, after doc ID we'll be needing file name, right? So file name, and after that uploader uploaded. Okay, then the number of chunks, which is the length of chunks, and finally the time we have uploaded this, right? So uploaded at, here we'll use time dot time. So time dot time. Okay, we'll save this, and this particular function will help us to upload a document and step by step loading every PDF pages, then getting our embedding, then upsert into Pinecone, and save the report metadata into a MongoDB. Okay, now to really able to test it, we need to create the route. Okay, so here we'll create route.py. Alright, so now we'll create the routes for our reports, like uploading reports, right? So first we need to import couple of dependencies. So API router depends upload file, and HTTP exception from FastAPI, then authenticate from .auth.routes, then load vector store from vector store, UUID to get our doc ID, then list, and reports collection where we'll be storing those metadata. Okay, now first initialize the router. So router API router, where we'll first define our prefix. So prefix will be /reports. Okay, then we need to get our tags. The tags will be reports as well. Okay, then router dot, this will be a post endpoint, so post /upload. Okay, then async function, so async def upload reports. So upload reports, where we'll first need to authenticate our users, because see, only admin can upload the report. So user depends on authenticate. Then you also need to get the files. So files will be in the list of upload file, which should be file in an object format. Okay, here we go. Then see, if my user is if my user role not patient, wait, so if the user that is trying to upload is not patient, then I need to raise an exception error. So HTTP exception as status code of 403. Okay, and we need to give the detail, keep only patient can upload reports for diagnosis. Okay, so that's done. Now we need to get our doc ID, and to get doc ID in a string format, we'll simply use uuid dot uuid 64. Okay, so 64, and this will generate an unique doc ID every time. Okay, then for an await, need to call our load vector store function, where we'll pass our files, also our uploaded, where we'll pass user, the username. Okay, and then finally we need to pass the doc ID, which is doc ID. And the reason I'm passing uploaded user username, because I need to make sure that this user have this particular diagnosis. I shouldn't able to mismatch that. I shouldn't able to see some other one, some other patient diagnosis, right? So that's the reason. Then finally return a simple message as uploaded and indexed. Okay, with also showing the doc ID. So doc ID. Okay, I'll save this and I'll come to main.py, and here we need to do one thing. From reports dot route, I need to import router as report router. Okay, and what I'll do, I'll simply copy this one, paste it over here, and I'll change this to report router. All right, okay, save. Okay, now let's test it. All right, so we have run the application. Okay, so I had one problem that in our .nb file we have named our Pinecone index as medical diagnosis, where the D was in the capital letter, but I was having this error. It's saying that invalid argument message name must consist of lowercase. So we have just simply changed the name up to a small d. Okay, then we have run that, and now you could see we have medical diagnosis of US East 1, dimension 768, metric dot product, and record count 0. Right? So okay, now what we'll do, we'll simply come to our postman. Okay, now here we have forgotten to check our login route, so that what we'll do first. So let me first add a new request, and I'll name this as login. Okay, and here I'll be adding this one, but I need to add auth / login. Right, now how to do the login? For that, come to this authorization and select this basic auth, and here we need to give the username. So our username would be Supratim, and the password is wrong. because our password was 1 2 3 4 and 5, I guess. So let's send it. Okay, so username Supradim and role is as patient. Okay, so this testing is done. Now we need to test for our upload reports, right? So we'll be adding a new request, and here again, sorry, not this one, this one. Okay, so first we'll simply authorize the user again. So send, we are saying this one, right? But for the reports, you could see in the route our prefix is reports and our route is upload, right? So we'll change this now up to reports, and here upload. Now in the body, come to this from data and choose the files, name it files, and change it from text to file. And here we need to select our report. So I have already have this sample report, but let me still show you a new report first. So we'll be using this report one. Okay, open. I'll simply upload the file. Okay, but before that, let me show you what that file has. So click in this. And so this report one PDF consists of this report of name, sample reports, birthdays, a basic default, a simple sample report. Okay, right? So then we'll simply, but before that we need to change this from get to post. So post reports upload files report one. Let's send it and see if there is any error or not. Okay, it's saying there is an error. Let's come to our VS Code. It's saying UUID. Okay, it will be 4, right? It was wrong. It should have been UUID 4. Okay, so now we'll send this again. Let's see. So application startup complete. Okay, so you could see we have gotten this 200k OK status of post reports upload. Let's wait. Here we go. You could see uploaded and indexed, and this is our doc ID. Okay, so our this testing is done. Let me rename this. So upload the report. Okay, now our next step would be to create the module for our diagnosis. Okay, let's do that. So after having tested the uploading reports module, let's create our diagnosis part. Okay, so auth is done, report is done, model is done. Now for the diagnosis, here we'll be having a file as query.py, because here the user will ask a query, right? So we first need to import some dependencies. So we need to import OS, Asensio, load.env, Pinecone, Google Generative AI embeddings, prompt template to cater our application to behave in a certain way. Then chat Groq, because we are using the Groq API. Now here we are taking our Pinecone API key, Pinecone index name, Google API key, and Groq API key, and we are keeping the Google API key as our environment. All right. Now simple initiate the Pinecone. So Pinecone will simply add Pinecone key, Pinecone API key, then get the index, pc.index with this Pinecone index name. Okay, now we need to get the embed model, which calling Google Generative AI embedding, then model, which is /001. Okay, after that we need to get our LLM. So LLM will be chat Groq, where we need to pass our temperature. I'll be giving it 0. Okay, I don't need to flexibility because it's an medical related thing, right? Then model name will be using simple llama 3 8b 8192 parameters. Okay, then so then we need our Groq API key, which is Groq API key. All right, so now we need to have our prompt. So prompt here I'll call my prompt template. Okay, so here it is, the prompt template dot from template, and this is the prompt that we'll be using, which is you are a medical assistant using only the provided context portions of the user's report. Produce a concise probable diagnosis, 1 to 2 lines, key findings from the report with the bullet points, and a recommended next step, test or treatment, and label clearly as suggestion, not medical advice, because you need to understand we cannot give advice because we are just using an LLM, not a proper expert doctor. So then this is the context and this is the user. Okay, and after that we need to create the rack chain. So rack chain, where we'll first provide our prompt, then our LLM. Okay, and now we need to define our async def diagnosis report. Okay, now we need to define this function. Okay, so now we need to define this function. So wait, this function will accept which user is asking the query, because see, doctor cannot. Okay, you can easily modify it, but as per this application doctor cannot ask any question. So we need to check that whoever is asking the query, is it a patient or not. So user will be string, so because we need to pass the user, then doc ID, because every user have its particular report, right? So doc ID, and we need to pass the question as well. So question also in the form of string. Okay, now the first thing we need to do that we need to embed the question, right? So for that, embed embedding, let's say embedding, we are calling our Google API key. So asyncio dot, keeping it in a thread to sync. Then simple will be using our embed model dot embed query and pass our question. Okay, then we'll also need pass the query to our Pinecone, because we need to extract the relevant information as well, right? So results, again await asyncio dot to thread, and here we need to pass our index dot, and then our vector. So vector will be this embedding, and we need to define that how many relevant information I want to retrieve. So let's say I want to retrieve the top 5 relevant information, and then I also need to make sure that I include the metadata. This should be true. Okay, simple as that. Now see, now I have all the results, but not all the results I need for my context. So I need to filter from my doc ID. Okay, so So filter for doc id matches. Okay, now I'll create an empty context because this is where I'll be filling the contexts, and from where I'm taking the sources, right? Because I need to make sure that for this particular diagnosis I am extracting the information from that particular report. Okay, because from a report A I should get the report A diagnosis. I shouldn't be getting report A diagnosis from the report B. So for that I need to make sure that I have track of all the reports. So I'll be initializing an empty set of sources set. Now for match in results dot get my matches, otherwise it will be an empty list. Okay, mean if I don't get any match, right? Let's say md where I'll store my match dot get the metadata, and if I doesn't receive any, and if I don't receive any metadata, then it will be a blank set. Okay, like a blank directory, not set. Then if my md dot get doc id, I mean if I get a doc id, so if md dot get doc id, then and if this doc id is equals to the doc id that I want, then what I'll do, I'll simply take the text snippet. Okay, so what I'll do, simply I'll create a variable at text snippet where md dot get, I'll be retrieving the text from that particular doc id of chunk. So text, and if I don't receive anything, then it will be a blank string. Okay, then after having that I need to add the context. So context dot append, I'll be adding the text snippet, and I also need to add into the sources set. So sources set dot add md dot get, I need to provide sources, so source. Okay, this is being done. Now if there is no context, so if there is no context, then I need to return a message as diagnosis will be none, and in the explanation part I need to write that no report content indexed for this doc id. Okay, I mean for this particular report doc id there is no content from that, from what we can retrieve any information to answer this particular question, or to give a proper diagnosis. Okay, now so that's been done. One more thing that we need to do, that we need to limit our context length. So to limit our context length, because we can't just fill up our whole context. Okay, so context text will be, let's say /n dot, here I'll join this my context up to 6 chunk. Okay, not 6 chunk, up to 5 chunk. Okay, all right, now final call RBAC, and how we'll do that, simple, it's a final variable where await asyncio dot to thread, because we are calling the API, and we'll pass our RBAC dot invoke. Okay, and context will be context text, and in the question we'll be having our question. Okay, and finally in the return in the diagnosis I need to have my final dot content, and in the sources I need to have the list of all the sources that I'm getting information from. Okay, so sources set. I'll simply save this. So this function will help me, and I think there's an error. It's saying that is invoke, there shouldn't be any em. Okay, now I'll save this one, LangChain.invoke, and then I have my context and my question over there. Okay, now what we need to do, we need to define the routes for this. Okay, so route.py. So for the route we need to import these dependencies. Okay, we need to import these dependencies. API router depends from HTTP exception, authenticate, diagnose from report, that function. The function's name is a bit different, I guess. We has diagnosis report. So diagnosis report, then we have our report collection, diagnosis collection. I think this is true. Let me just check. So in the model, DB model, we have diagnosis report. So in the diagnosis, in this route diagnosis collection, it has in this db.py diagnosis collection. All right. Okay, so now we need to initialize the router. So router will be API router, and we need to pass the prefix. Prefix will be diagnosis, and need to give the tags. Tags will be also diagnosis. Okay, now for first endpoint router.post, this will be from report. Okay, to get the diagnosis report from the report. So router.post from report. Now we need to create the function async def diagnose. Okay, so first we need to use this user depends that we have been using, depends with authenticate, because see, we need to make sure that who is using. So who are that who is using. So depends authenticate, then I need to pass the doc ID, which will be in the form of string, and this will be an object of form. Okay, doc ID. Then I need to get the question, which is also a string, from of default, because we should always, because we'll be providing the question in the from, and if we don't provide any question, we should get a by default value or a by default message that please provide a diagnosis on my report. Okay, so see it again carefully. User depends mean who is using this particular endpoint. Then we need to see in the front end we'll be having two form, like two placeholder. In one we need to provide the doc ID, and in the second we need to provide the question. So that's why, and so that's why we have this form object for doc ID, and also a from object for our question. Okay, so after that, the first thing that we need to do is to get our report. So report reports collection dot find one, then let's say our doc ID. With this doc ID, if we do find a report, okay, if there is no report, so if not a report, then what we'll do, we'll raise the error. So HTTP exception status code of 404 with the detail that report not found. Okay, now if we do find a report, then we need to make sure that patient can only access. So patient can only access. Okay, so for that, if user role is patient, then and only it can work. It will work. Okay, and report uploader of username. Sorry, username. Okay, and what this mean, that the user that is using this particular endpoint should be a patient, and the particular diagnosis that patient want from a report, he should have uploaded the report by himself. Like, it shouldn't be the case that I have uploaded a report and you want a diagnosis from my report. So that's why we need to add this safety check. Okay, now if user is this and report is not the username, like what this particular condition checks, that the user that is trying to use the endpoint, he haven't uploaded the PDF. So we have to raise an error, that raise HTTP exception with status code of 406 with detail that okay, so detail would be you cannot access another user's report. Okay, and that's being said. Now finally, if user is a patient and want diagnosis from his own report, where, like, for a good condition. Okay, so if user, the role, let's say, is patient, okay, and he is the one who have uploaded the PDF, will take the response, await Asensio, not Asensio, sorry, we need to call the function. So diagnosis report function, and here we'll pass username. Okay, and we'll also need to pass the doc ID, which is a simple doc ID, and we need to pass the question. Okay, and we'll be storing the answer in our res, like the response, and then we need to persist the diagnosis report. Mean we need to store the report into a MongoDB. Okay, so diagnosis collection, sorry, dot insert one, right? Insert one this. Okay, so we need to add this doc ID, username, username, question, diagnosis, sources. Okay, so yeah, that's been said. We need to return the response value, so res. Okay, and then there's another thing that we need to do, that if the user is a doctor or other, then they can't ask for diagnosis. Now as per this application, what I have done, that only user can ask for a diagnosis. No doctor or any other role in future cannot. Okay, so we need to satisfy this condition as well. So simple, if the user role in doctor or admin, I'm just giving it for an example, then I need to raise another error. So http exception with status code 407 with the detail of that cannot access for diagnosis with this endpoint. Because see, doctor can see a diagnosis report but with a different endpoint, which will be creating after that. Okay, with this endpoint. And after that, the final thing that we need to do, and for a safety check, what I'll do, final and http exception simple status code 408, and this will be for unauthorized action. Okay, and this is just for a safety check that if someone is using this kind of any other work, then it should show an error. Okay, we'll simply save this function. All right, okay, and this is the main endpoint for anyone to ask a report. Like for our patient to ask a report, the patient will use this endpoint. But if a doctor want to see all the diagnosis, then for that we have this endpoint of /by patient name. So the doctor have to pass the patient name of which he want to see all the diagnosis. So if you can see, we are passing the patient name, and the user depends authenticate because the user have to be a doctor to see all the diagnoses. Okay, so the user role, if the user role is not doctor, then an error, only doctors can access this endpoint. Then diagnosis report, we are finding all the diagnosis collection with this patient name, and if we do not find anything, then we'll show no diagnosis found for this patient. And if we do found, then we'll have this empty list which will fill through this loop, record in this diagnosis records, record ID will be the string of record, then record list dot append. Okay, then we'll simply return the record list. Okay, so that was for this particular routes file. And to be able to use this, what we'll do, we'll come to this main.py, and here we'll add this route. So from dot diagnosis dot route, will import router as diagnosis router. Okay, then simple here app dot include router and pass the diagnosis router. Okay, simple save. Let's save it again. Okay, so finish server process application. Why it's saying shutting down? Okay, so there is an error saying in the route.py. All right, so there was an error. All right, that it was saying I didn't use this double dot, so that was the error. So now it's done, application startup complete. So now let's come to Postman, and here what we'll do, let us first see. So this is the doc ID that the report we have okay, so the report that we have uploaded now, and this is the doc ID for that. So whenever we want a diagnosis, we have to mention this doc ID. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll add a new request. So here is my new request, and first thing that I have to do, it's simple. Come to the authorization, login, send. So Supratim patient, okay. Then come to this body from data, and here I need to change, okay. So first let me just change, it will be doc ID, this will be text, and this will be question and text, okay. But before that, let me just change the endpoint. So it will be diagnosis / from report, right? So I need to change this. So diagnosis, then from report. Let's change it to post. And one thing that I have to do, from this uploaded report, I need to copy this doc ID, okay. So I have copied the doc ID. I'll paste this simply over here, and in the question I'll write, please provide a concise diagnosis and suggested next step, okay. Send. Let's see if there is any error or not. Okay, so we are seeing an error. Okay, so sure, see, this to define set we need to use this set, right? Now it is in set, otherwise it's the simple tuple. I think now it should be work. I think now it should work. So we'll just come over here, we'll send this again. See, so this is the diagnosis, and this is also saying that from which report it has extracted the information, from report 1. Okay, there is all other things. So we have tested this endpoint to get our diagnosis report, and we have named them, and we have named this endpoint as diagnosis, okay. Now we need to test this other endpoint as this by patient name, so that a doctor can get all the diagnosis report, okay. So what we'll do, okay, so let me first duplicate this endpoint. All right, but before that we need to first create a new user as doctor, right? So I'll just copy this and paste it over here, and I also need to comment it out, and just simple one thing, sn, and let me just change the password to 999 and doctor, okay. I'll send this, user created successfully, okay. Now come to this login, not login actually, this login copy, authorization sn 9999, okay. Send. You can see it's in Supratim with a doctor. Now to test it, you could see in the parameter we are passing the string, okay. So what we'll do in this params, in this key section, we'll write this patient. Oh acha, so before that I need to change the endpoint, okay. Diagnosis, and it will be by patient name, okay. We have done the authorization. Let me just send this again. Oh sorry, it was auth login, and this is the doctor. Now I need to change this. So diagnosis, and this will be by patient name. Okay, and in this parameter I'll come over here, I'll choose patient name, and here I'll write patient name of, right? See, in the parameter we are, in the URL parameter we are passing the name. That's why we need to use this params column. Send. Okay, so ID, this doc ID, this Supradim, please provide a concise. So this is giving me everything related to that particular patient's diagnosis, and you can match the doc ID as well. See, it is starting from 7E, so here also 7E, and like it's the same ID. Okay, let me change this as Dr. Fetch. Okay, so our whole backend is done. Now we'll create the front end with Streamlit, and then we'll deploy the application. Okay, all right, so now we'll be creating the Streamlit front end. Okay, so for that I'll create a folder as client. So let's create a folder, client. Okay, now within this client we'll be having this one file as app.py, and I'll be creating all the front-end file in this one single file. Okay, and if you want you can easily make it much more modular, but for easy showcase I'm just keeping all the functions in one single file. Okay, as I have created much more modular content before, so if you want you can see my other videos, but in this video I'll be just keeping it pretty simple in one file so it becomes easy for you to understand. Okay, all right, so first we'll start with our importing some dependencies. So import Streamlit as ht, then we need to import request because we'll be taking requests from APIs, right? Then JSON, because see, APIs will be giving us data in the JSON format, so we need to have JSON. Then from requests dot auth we need to import HTTP basic auth. Okay, and finally import date time. Okay, here we go. All right, now for the first we need configuration. Okay, and here is the thing, what we'll do, we'll simply add a .env file first, .env file, and here we'll write our base URL. Okay, which is, as of now, let me keep it as http://127.0.0.8000. Okay, what I have to do here, simple, from .env import load.env, call the function, simple as that. Then in the configuration, API URL os dot, I need to import os as well, so os dot get env, and here base URL. Okay, so I'm taking the base URL in this API URL, and one thing that I want, ht dot let's say ht dot API URL. Okay, now let us run this file first. So to run this, Streamlit run under client, I have this file. Let's see. See, this is our API URL. Okay. All right. So what we'll do now? So what we'll do? We'll simply comment this out. Okay. And now we need to set page configuration. Okay, so ht dot set page config, and here we'll set our page title, which is medical report diagnosis, and I want to keep the layout as wide, and for the initial sidebar state I want to keep it expanded, because see, I'll be keeping the login and sign up, that whole form in the sidebar. Okay, of course, and you are free to change it as per your wish. Okay, all right. So now one more thing I need to do, which is state management. Actually it should be initial state management. Okay. Okay, so you could see, if logged in not in session state, mean the user is not logged in, then our session is false. If username has been not added, then the username will be blank. Same for role will be blank at first, and authentication and authentication would be at none initially. Okay, so now first thing that we'll be doing will be writing the API function. Okay, so the number one would be our sign up function. Okay, now see, we have 5 API routes, so we need to create 5 functions that will cater to take data from using that 5 API routes. Okay, so for this first one, which is this sign up user, we'll be having this function which says that def sign up user, which will be taking 3 arguments as username, password and role. Then we are having a try except block. Now this try says response. We are first taking the response from the API and we are storing that into this response. So request dot post, because that is because to get sign up was a post method. So request dot post our API URL. You could see from here, from our .env file, our API URL. Okay, so API URL would be API URL /auth/signup. Then in the JSON format, we'll be having in this data username, password and role. Then your response will be status code response.json. As in the backend, the status code was 200 for the success, then that will be here 200 status code with response.json. And if there is any error, we'll be saying that server is unavailable, please try again later. Okay, so that was the first function. Now the second function was what? The second function was the authenticate function, right? For this authenticate function, we have this. I need to change this to API. Okay, so this authenticate user function will take username and password as its argument. Then again, it has a try except block. In response, we are storing the response from the API, and this endpoint tends to be login, right? Login. Okay, so auth/login HTTP basic auth username and password. Then response.status code. For success it will be 200, and for any error, for any server side error, it will be 500. If any error by the user, then it will be 400. Okay, all right, so these are pretty simple API endpoint. Now the third one which is the first tricky one, which is upload medical report. So here is the function for upload report, and it will take an argument of auth, which is this authentication of the user, like if the user is a doctor or a patient, that particular concept. And it will take an argument of files, because which document you want to upload. Then in the header it will take accept application JSON. Then in the files data it will just simply get the value and the type and the name. Okay, and in the response it will store the file data like the PDF value and its headers, and it will return a status code of 200. And if again there's an error, it will show that server is unavailable, please try again later. Okay, simple. The main API has been written in the backend, so these are just how to get the value, how to send the value, how to set the value from the front end to the backend. Okay, now after that, fourth one was diagnosis data function, or more easily diagnosis function. Okay, so this is the function of diagnosis, and this function will take authentication, like who is trying to use the endpoint, like a patient or a doctor, then the doc ID and the question. Okay, because only patient can access, and patient have to pass the question and the doc ID, like from which PDF you want to diagnose yourself. Okay, then this is how we'll be taking the data of the doc ID and the question. Then this is how we'll be storing the response from the API endpoint from report. And this is a simple try except block configuration. Okay, now the fifth one was the last but not least, the whole diagnosis function, right? So this is the function that get doctor diagnosis. It will again take auth and patient name. Auth will signifies that it should be the doctor, not a patient. And we also have to pass the patient name as the parameters. Okay, so you can see in the parameters we are sending the patient name as patient name. Okay, not by a body or the from. Okay, again in response we are storing the data and simple and try except block. Okay, so these are the 5 functions that will cater the 5 API endpoint values. Okay, now after this we need to design the front end, like the view. So we'll first design the sidebar and then the main application. Okay, now we need to add the sidebar and the authentication flow front end. Okay, so let me first write a comment. So authentication flow. Okay, and I'll simply paste the code over here because these are pretty simple code, like nothing there to explain. Okay, so ht.sidebar, the title, then the simple markdown. Then we need to manage the states. So if session state is logged in, if the user logged in, then success will be showing a success message, and also will be showing a logout button. And the moment the user will press the logout button, all the session will be just blank and none. Okay, then we'll just return that, and then we'll just return the application again. Okay, otherwise if the user doesn't click on the logout button, then it will keep logging and log in the username, password, sidebar button login. Then the moment the user will log in, the states values will get changed. So logged in will be true, username will be the login username, the role will be the role, and the authentication will be the HTTP basic auth with the login username and the login password. And the user will see a message, as login successfully. Then again a rerun, and if anything goes bad, then a simple login failed, or a please enter a username, a default safety check. Okay, then for the sidebar, again first the user will be having an option to put the values of sign up username, sign up password, sign up role as text input and select box for role. Here we have patient and doctor. You can easily modify it up to admin, nurse, anything you want. Okay. And if sidebar button sign up, like if the user press the sign up button, then and if sign up username and password is there, then we'll take the data, we'll take the code, and we'll show that. Okay. And we just simply select save this. We'll go to this, we'll refresh the application, and here you could see in the left we have all the thing. Okay, so let me just log in, but before that let me run the backend application first. So I'll create a new terminal, and here again I need to activate this. So scripts activate. Okay, then reload. Okay, it will take some time to run. All right, application startup complete. Now if I test it with, see, logged in as SN Supratim. Okay, I can easily create a new user. Let's say, what should I create? Rohan 5555 sign up. See, user created successfully. You can now log in. Now Rohan logged in. Okay, now the final and last thing, that our main application content. Okay, so this is the thing. Let me just explain you a bit. So let me just add a comment that this is the main page application. Okay, so at first we are giving this title as GenAI powered medical diagnosis. Markdown: this application uses a FastAPI backend with the LangChain GenAI stack. Okay, now as first logged in will be, please log in and sign up to use the application, because at first you have to log in. And if you are logged in as a patient, then you will be seeing the patient dashboard. And if you are logged in as, let's say, doctor, then you'll be seeing the doctor dashboard. Then for every dashboard the configurations are different. Let me just walk you through a bit. So for patient dashboard, you have upload your report option, where you can upload your report through PDF, text, whatever you want. Then you can submit. Then you have a submit button. And after that you have a get. Then after submitting, you'll be having a new section for get your diagnosis, where you have to put your document ID, and you can add your question there, what kind of diagnosis you want. By default we have, please provide a diagnosis based on my report, but you can always free to provide your own question. Okay, and this is how we'll be adding those data to our MongoDB. Don't worry, we'll be just simply fetching the function as well. Okay, now for doctor can view patient diagnosis history. So the doctor can add the patient's username, and then he can easily see all the diagnosis records. Okay, so that's being said, these are pretty simple code right here, and I'll be giving the GitHub repo, so you can easily see for yourself, and I'll be giving the GitHub repo in the description, so you can easily see for yourself, because I'm not wasting that much time on explaining the same Streamlit code again and again. Okay, so I'll save this, I'll come over here, I'll refresh the application, and here you could see GenAI powered medical diagnosis. Okay, so let us first sign in as a doctor. So log in, and you could see doctor dashboard, and here is the option view patient diagnosis history. Now if you remember, we have a patient called Supratim, right? So this diagnosis records, found one diagnosis records. Now this is the record ID, the date and the time, document ID is this. Question was, please provide a concise diagnosis and suggested next step. Answer is this. Everything. Sources from this PDF. Okay. Now let us also add a new something. Okay. So I'll create a new user as Ahan, whose password would be 123456. Okay. He's a patient. So sign up. Okay. Ahan 123456. Login. Okay. So now Ahan can easily upload. Now browse file. From the download section, I have this sample report. I'll open this, upload the reports. It will take some time to uploading the whole document into our Pinecone vector database. See, reports uploaded successfully. Your document ID is this. Okay, on your document ID now automatically it has placed this document ID in this folder, in this text area. Now I can easily ask a question. By default, it has this. I'll be keeping this as well. So click this button, get diagnosis, and here we go. Probable diagnosis: mild community acquired pneumonia, likely caused by bacterial infection, mild fever, other things as well. Okay, and the sources for this is the sample report.pdf. Okay, now the name is Ahan, right? Now if I log out and if I sign in as a doctor, and if I try to see Ahan's diagnosis, I'll be seeing this one. See, 12:07 a.m. like 12:07 a.m. and its sources is this particular PDF. So it has a good track of from which PDF a particular patient is getting that diagnosis from. Okay, and you can easily make it useful for your any other application. Okay, and you can easily modify this to much more complex with much more multiple roles as well. Okay, now our time is to deploy the application to in render and Streamlit Cloud. First thing that, let me just deactivate this. Okay, and the thing that we'll do, simple, git init. Okay, now before I upload anything, the most important thing, using git ignore. Now this git ignore file will contains the file that I don't need to expose to my online repo. Number one, VNV, of course, because it contains too much thing and it's just a waste of uploading everything. Then iCache, no need. Then any kind of .env file is not necessary. Then that's all right. Python version you can easily. Okay, now it's all right. Okay, so we can't expose .vnb, PyCache, and .env file. Okay, now what we'll do, if you see that this is the repo that I've created, medical report diagnosis. Okay, and here first thing is git init that we have already done. Second will be git add. Now git add dot mean everything. Okay, now our first commit, git commit, I'll just copy this, paste it over here, git commit. Okay, then git branch main, done. Okay, then this one, copy and paste it over here, done. And then for the final, this origin main, paste it, enter, and it will upsert my whole repo to that GitHub. Okay, simply refresh and we could see all the files has been uploaded and we don't have .env over here because that's something pretty secret for everyone. Okay, now we need to deploy in a render and Streamlit app. But before that, let me do one thing. This is the MongoDB, right? This is the MongoDB database. Now what we have to do, this is the project medical diagnosis with the cluster 1. So come to this network access, and here add this, click on this add IP address. Okay, and here click this allow access from anywhere, then confirm. Includes your current IP address plus anything. So this 0.0.0/0 means it will be accessible from any IP. Okay, and I have already gotten a message in my email that I have allowed access. Okay, all right, it's done. Now here what I'll do, first let me deploy in render, right? So now we'll deploy the application in render, right? So first click on this new web service, public, copy this one, paste it over here, connect. So my name would be medical report diagnosis. Okay, Python 3 main branch, root directory will be root, and here pip install hyphen. Okay, here this is the main thing. Okay, see the command that we have used, what we have used, uvcon, then under server dot main app. So we need to use same. Okay, server dot main, then the app with host of anything. Okay, so that's why the root will be that. Okay, so it will be free. Now in the env I need to add my environment variables and the variables. So we have mongo URI, we have database name, we have Pinecone API key, we have Pinecone index name, we have Pinecone environment, Google API key, Groq API key, and up to direct. Then deploy the web service. Okay, so this will take some time, and till that let us deploy our front end into the Streamlit cloud. Okay, here click on this, and this is the Streamlit dashboard. Click, and I have this multiple app. Okay, see this many thing. So click on this create app, deploy a public app from GitHub. So deploy now. I need to add this, copy, paste. Okay, so essence of the medical report diagnosis main branch. File path is this client / app.py. Okay, now this is the name. Now this is a very bad name. I don't want this. So what I want, medical diagnosis. I don't have the thing. So okay, this domain is available. Let's see this, if there is any error or not. No. All right, so diagnosis is, so this domain is finally available. Okay, so before I do that, I forgot to do one thing. Okay, which we have to do first. So here I'll create requirements.txt, and I need to add Streamlit, then requests, then what more, python.env, and we don't need anything else. Okay, done. Okay, save, then come over here, add. Okay, so git push globally origin main. Okay, now I'll come to here. Now if I refresh this, you could see in my client I have this requirement.txt. Okay, so the build is successful for my render backend. Deploying, running this particular command. I hope there won't be any error. Now here, okay, so medical diagnosis, everything is there. Advanced settings, click on this. Now here we need to add our ANB file. Okay, so come this, copy this, paste it right over here. Okay, and okay, so my backend service is live. Okay, so I'll just copy this. So I'll copy the backend and I'll paste it right over here. I think I don't need the quotation. Then simply save. Yeah, there is an error. So I need to use the quotation. Okay. Okay. Save, deploy. All right. So this is our deployed application. We have our essence supratim doctor, right? So 9999 login. Here we go. Okay. So our login is working pretty fine. Let me just create a new user. So let's say Mohsin. There will be 454545. See, 454545, and he's a patient. So sign up. Successful. If we go to our MongoDB and if we just come to the cluster and browse collection in the user, so you could see Mohsin, a patient. Okay, and then I can easily Mohsin 454545 login, and here you go. All right, so that's it for this video, and thanks for watching if you have come this so far, and yeah, thanks for watching.